Thank you. Thank you, everybody. A couple of years ago, I had the coolest tweet in the world that day. So what happened was, the tweet was this. The tweet was, with Dalai Lama, behind Dalai Lama, a buffet line. So what happened was this. We were having lunch, a buffet lunch, and the Dalai Lama was supposed to come and speak for a couple of minutes, and he was supposed to leave. He wasn't supposed to eat there. And because he wasn't supposed to eat there, it was a buffet lunch. Right? I mean, if he was supposed to eat there, it would have been a formal lunch. So it's kind of a buffet lunch. And then he came slightly early, and then he decided he wanted to eat there. And we were all like, oh my God, right? We kind of started panicking. And then I was already at the head of the buffet line. I was at the table, and then I saw him coming from a distance. And he was going to stand. He was going to join the line, and we were like, no, Your Holiness, you get to cut in. So he got to cut in right in front of me. And I was like, that's me, like, at the buffet line with the Dalai Lama. It was very funny. So I tweeted it. Yeah, best tweet in the world that day. So somebody asked me, what did the Dalai Lama get for himself? I said, he's the Dalai Lama. He made himself one with everything. Duh. True story. So the Dalai Lama, as I got to know him, I also found something else about him, which is that, like his public image, by the way, the Dalai Lama you see in public is the same guy you see in private, which is he's very, very smart, he is very funny, and sometimes he's a little bit mischievous. So the example of his mischievous, one time he was giving an interview, and somebody asked him, they said, Your Holiness, what is the happiest moment in your life? And His Holiness said, right now. And then of course he gave that mischievous smile, right now. So, I mean, in a sense, it's a joke. He's telling a joke. But in a sense, very importantly, he was making a point. And the point he was making is that for a highly trained mind, right now is or can always be the happiest moment in your life, right now, right? Joy on demand. The key word is highly trained. So the key to that, between the Dalai Lama and the rest of us is training. Maybe I'll tell another joke. So a Chinese guy went to a fortune teller. Fortune teller looked at his palm and said, you know what? You are miserable right now, and you will continue to suffer misery until you turn 40. And Chinese guy, yes! After I turn 40, when my miseries finally go away. And fortune teller say, no, after you turn 40, you get used to it. I think that's like, for many people's lives, it's like that. The good news is that, I mean, looking at the Dalai Lama story, I think even my own story, is that it doesn't have to be that way. It turns out that access to joy is a skill. And because all skills are trainable, right? So if access to joy is a skill, it also must be trainable. And in my life experience, I found that to be true. Because when I was young, I used to be miserable. I used to be the guy in the second story. Right? And then almost by accident, I found Buddhism, I found meditation, and then I started meditating. And by the time I came to America, I joined a small company called Google. It became quite successful. It was a fairly big company after I joined. So even by the time I joined Google, I was a jolly man. And my job title in Google was the Jolly Good Fellow. Right? Because I was known as the guy who's always happy. Jolly Good Fellow, which nobody can deny. That was my full job title. With parentheses, which nobody can deny. It was very funny. Started as a joke, by the way, until it ended on the front page of New York Times, and then I got stuck with it. So for me, my life experience was the same thing, training. I realized that when I was young, my baseline happiness, so there's this concept of baseline happiness, which is your happiness level. If something good happened to you, you eventually go back to the baseline. If something bad happens, go back to the baseline. The baseline is more or less fairly stable. And I found and scientifically, for a long time, scientists believe that the baseline is unchangeable. And I found in my lifetime that the baseline happiness is movable. For me, from almost one extreme to almost another extreme. Right? When I was young, if nothing is happening, I was miserable. And today, if nothing is happening, I'm jolly. It's a huge shift. And it was no accident. It was through training. And so I wrote this book about how to do the training. And this is the book Joy on Demand. Sorry, I didn't have to hold up like Vanna White. So training, how do you do that? It turns out you can train to access joy in 3 simple steps. And the first step is easing into joy, easing. And this is how it works. You begin by training, no, even better than, you begin by resting the mind, resting. And resting is an instinct. We all know how to rest, right? When we have a workout, at the end of the day, we rest. Turns out resting can also be a skill. It can also be something that you can practice so that you can be good at resting. And then when you become good at resting, your mind is at ease. And then when your mind is at ease, something happens, which is you may find joy arising. Joy. Which may be surprising. For me, it was like profoundly surprising. I discovered for myself that when I was able to, I developed a skill to be able to rest my mind so that it's calm and clear, and to do this on demand. I found that when I do that, joy consistently, reliably arises in the mind. The mind was dominated with joy. It was fascinating. And even after I could do that reliably, I didn't know why. So I asked one of my teachers, and he said, it's very simple. He said that joy is a default state of mind. That's all, right? So it's a default state of mind. Therefore, when you bring the mind to a calm and clear state, all you're doing is to go back to default, which is joy. No magic. That's it. That blew my mind. And I discovered something. I discovered that in the ancient text, there's actually a technical term to describe this mental factor. A technical term is Suka. And it is, Suka is like, depending on translation, the context sometimes translated as happiness, bliss, contentment. The most technical translation I've come across is non-energetic joy. It's a joy that doesn't require energy. And one way to describe it in the ancient text is that it's like the air conditioning. No, just kidding. Ancient text did not describe air conditioning. Oh, by the way, anybody Buddhist around here? Okay, a couple. I'm going to tell a Buddhist joke. I know in the Buddhists, they take 3 refuges. I'm such a lousy Buddhist, I have to take 4 refuges. I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and air conditioning. 33% more refuge than the leading brand of Buddhists. So anyway, so it's like the harm of the air conditioning. You find that it's always there. You miss it all the time, right? You're talking and so on. It's like you don't hear the sound of the air conditioning. However, if you do 2 things, the first thing is you quiet down. Second thing is you pay attention. You find the sound of air conditioning. And then you find, wait a minute, it's always been there. And it's the same with Suka, with joy, this non-energetic joy. There are 2 features about it because it's non-energetic. The first feature is that it is extremely sustainable because it doesn't require energy. It's always there. So once you're able to access it, you can always see it. The second thing is because it's non-energetic, it's very subtle. Like I said, it's the sound of air conditioning. The only way to access it is by quieting and paying attention. Otherwise, you'll miss it. And the corollary of that is that once you develop the skill to access Suka, then you have a highly reliable source of joy that you can access anytime. It's always there. And once that happens, mind-blowing. It's life-changing. It's life-changing on a couple of levels. The first level that is life-changing is that, we spend our life pursuing happiness. Right? It's even in the Constitution. And then once you're able to access Suka, you find out something. You find out that happiness has always been there. Happiness is not something you pursue. Happiness is something you allow. Just by sitting, allowing to be there, it's there. Like, mind-blowing, right? And for me, the implication of that is that I'm no longer a slave to the pursuit of happiness. I'm now free to do whatever I need to do. And so that sort of changed my life. And it also has the effect of raising happiness baseline. Right? Because it's always a joy to be accessed. And then there's another implication, which is, I think, even more profound than what I just said, which is that this source of joy enables you to be joyful independent of sense pleasure and ego pleasure. I think a lot of us grow up having this belief that in order to be happy, we need to one of two things or both, which is we need pleasant sensations or we need pleasant ego. Right? Pleasant sensation is good taste, good feeling in the body, good sights and everything. Pleasantness of ego, people praise us, people say they like us, they will look up to us, get promotions. Right? So the corollary of that is that therefore, if that is true, then in the absence of pleasant sensation and pleasant ego, there is no joy. Therefore, to be happy is hard because you keep having to create and or pursue pleasant senses, pleasant ego. And then once you're able to access the joy that's always been there in the mind, that breaks. And that breaks in the way I experience it is that if I'm eating chocolate, I'm joyful. If I'm sitting there not eating chocolate, I'm just sitting there, I'm also joyful. Right? So that again changes everything. And I'm going to repeat that because that's important. Joy independent of sense pleasure and ego pleasure. That's the baseline. Oh, you want to take a seat? Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. Oh, where was I? Oh, joy. Okay. I forgot. Forgot to be happy. So the practice in step one is this. You start with easing. So once you ease the mind, and then in the mind at rest, in the mind at ease, you allow joy to arise. And then pay attention to the joy, and then allowing the joy to reinforce the ease. Right? Because when the mind is joyful in a very subtle way, in a very calm, quiet way, is also calming. There's a calming effect. So use that to reinforce the ease, and then use the ease again to reinforce the joy. And then it becomes a virtuous cycle. And the more you do that, the stronger the cycle becomes. And then you end up with again, it's a skill. Right? The more you do it, the more skillful you become. And then you end up with the ability to just drop into ease and joy on demand. Powerful stuff. Right? Shall we try a little bit of that? Okay. I'm going to. Okay. Let's do something very, very, very easy. One breath. For one breath, I like you to do this. I like you to bring full attention to the breath, gentle but total attention to the breath. One in breath and one out breath. Sounds good? Okay. Beginning now. Thank you. I know this is Berkeley, so you're more advanced in this than most audiences. Most audiences, what do I do? Let me do a survey. How many of you feel a little bit calmer, at least a little bit calmer after the breath? Let's show our hands. Yeah, see the Berkeley crowd, it's like everybody. Not really. Another crowd will be like 70%. But Berkeley is almost everybody. So it leads to a question. Why does it work so well? It's only one breath. How does one breath work so well? It's very simple. There are two reasons. The first reason is physiological, which is that when you're bringing full attention to the breath, what happens? You notice that naturally, somehow, your breath becomes slower and deeper. Right? You notice that. And when that happens, you're stimulating your vagus nerve. And when you're stimulating your vagus nerve, you are initiating something called the relaxation response, which is the direct opposite of the stress response. So you're basically unstressing, like the reverse of stress. Your heart rate goes down, your blood pressure goes down, your muscle tensions reduce in one breath. I mean, it doesn't fully, but you begin. That's the physiological reason. Psychologically, it's even more powerful. Psychologically, to be regretful, you need to be in the past. To worry, you need to be in the future. When you are bringing full attention to the breath, then for the duration of one breath, you are in the present. Therefore, for the duration of one breath, you are free from worry and regret. Freedom from worry and regret. How amazing that is. And that is why in one breath, you feel more rested. Imagine being able to do this for more than one breath. 3 breaths, 5 breaths, 10 breaths, an hour. Freedom from worry and regret. Even the one breath alone, for those of you who have a stressful life or you're managers or something, you're carrying worry and regret all the time, or business owners, carrying worry and regret all the time. Imagine being able to let it go even for one breath, then bring it back up. That allows your body and mind to rest. So how powerful is this? I read a research study a couple of years ago, which blew my mind. And the study was on tennis players, the best tennis players in the world. So the question is, what distinguishes the best tennis players in the world, those who win the Wimbledon and so on? Turns out they have one very important skill, which is between points. So that 10, 15 seconds between points, they're able to rest their body and minds in such a way that they're much more rested at the end of the 10 seconds than at the beginning. In 10 seconds, 15 seconds, they can rest body and mind. And because of that, they can sustain high performance. And because of that, they win. And so I read the research. I was fascinated. I talk about this in my talks a lot. But I never had a chance to verify it because I didn't know any world-class tennis players. And then I met this guy. His name is Novak. And by reputation, he is, I don't know, the best player in the history of the game or something. So I asked Novak, is this true for you? And I mean, generally, is this true in general and is this true for you? And he said, yes, it is true. And he says, Novak says, at his level, tennis is no longer a physical game. Tennis is a mental game. Right? And the ability to rest body and mind and the ability to keep calm is how he keeps winning. And then later on, I found out that he's a meditator. Right? He didn't say it at the time. So for those of you who aspire to be the best tennis player in the history of the game, you know what to do now. So this is a very powerful effect. I mean, it is good for your body and mind, it's good for your soul, and it turns out it also helps you to become successful. And that's only step 1. Right? So this exercise you did, resting the mind, if you do this a lot, it turns into a skill, and it is life-changing. So homework, let me see. I'm trying to remember what the homework is. Okay, homework is waiting. Every time you have to wait for anything, take one conscious breath. Sounds good? Yeah, it's easy, right? So traffic light, DMV, or waiting for coming, or waiting for me to appear. Let's take conscious breaths. So first it's good for you, right? Because you're getting the training in resting the mind and accessing joy. And there's a side effect which for me was surprising, which is if you do this enough, you will never be bored again for the rest of your life. Because every time you're bored, you say, wait, this is an opportunity to take mindful breaths. No boredom, ever. Sounds good? Okay. Can I give you a second homework? Second homework, 1 breath a day for the rest of your life. That's all I ask. 1 a day for the rest of your life. That's all I ask. Sounds good? Okay, pinky swear? Okay, good. Thank you. So that's only step 1. Step 2 is inclining the mind toward joy. Inclining the mind. The word inclination is very interesting. In the old ancient Buddhist text, the word inclination of mind is compared to the inclination or slope of a mountain. When a mountain is sloped in a certain way, when water flows, it flows effortlessly in that direction. So the key word here is effortless. When the mind is inclined in a certain way, mental factors, mental experiences flow effortlessly in that direction. For example, if your mind is inclined towards anger, every other thing makes you angry effortlessly. But if your mind is inclined towards kindness, every other thing is an excuse to be kind. And it's the same with joy. The mind can be inclined towards joy. And when that happens, effortlessly, the mind flows towards joy. It's joyful, like some large percentage of the time. Maybe not all the time, but by inclination. Because you're never angry all the time, right? But by inclination, you're joyful a lot. And the key word is effortlessly. Question is how? One of the key parts, there are a couple of points in the training, but I'll tell you the most important one. The most important part of this training of inclining the mind towards joy is to pay attention to thin slices of joy in daily life. Thin slices of joy. So what does that mean? In life, we find that there are moments of subtle joy all the time. For example, if I'm speaking for a long time and I'm thirsty, ooh, that was nice, right? And I'm sure you have the experience. I'm sure you drink water at least once a day, and actually the same experience. When you're hungry, the first bite, ooh, that's delicious, right? When you meet a friend, so hey, like that moment, like how are you doing, man? Right, that's joy. However, you find that each of these moments of joy is very subtle, and it lasts only for a few seconds. Therefore, they're thin in both space and time. And because they're thin in space and time, we don't notice them at all. So the practice is simply to notice thin slices of joy. That is all. And when you notice, what happens? If we're going to play a game now, let's say we play a game. We go out and count number of blue cards, and whoever count the higher number of blue cards wins a prize. By the way, you know what prize you're winning? So at first I was going to give you a bell, but then I was thinking, no bell, please. So you're going to win a no bell, please prize. But it was, okay, blue cards. So if you play the game, right, count number of blue cards on the street, you'll find that every time you're in traffic, you find that blue cards are everywhere. You just never notice them. And so first thing to notice, they're everywhere. Second thing is if you play the game long enough, you play for 1 week, even after the game stops, you notice that they're all everywhere. The blue cards are everywhere, right? Same thing here. If you notice thin slices of joy, and not just notice, you pay attention to it. Attend to thin slices of joy. First thing you find, they're everywhere. Second thing, you find that you enjoy them more just because you're paying attention to them. Like previously you were like eating, right? Now it's like at least the first bite, ooh, delicious. Right? So you enjoy it a little bit more. I mean, I won't say a little bit, like twice as much. Yeah, with no difference. Everything else stays the same. It doesn't take extra time, doesn't take extra effort. Already, you feel happier. And more importantly, there's momentum. Right? So even when you're not consciously doing it, because you've been attending to it, the momentum follows and you still notice them. And even more important, I think this is the crux of it. The most important part is that once you do this a lot, you become familiar with joy. So the key word in this training is familiarization. And the thing about the word familiar in English is that it is very closely related to the word family. Right? So to become familiar, or for the mind to become familiar with joy, it means that joy becomes a member of family. Joy becomes like a best friend. Somebody we can rely on, somebody who's there for you all the time. Somebody you can call on at any moment. Joy becomes that. So just by noticing, attending, you become familiarized. And by becoming familiarized, you develop an inclination of mind. And once a mind is inclined, then you have effortless access to joy. Fascinating stuff, right? Okay. Shall we do an exercise? Okay. So now you're experienced. You've done the one breath, and because you are Berkeley folks, so I'm going to give you a challenge. So this is an extra long meditation. I hope you don't mind. You're going to do 3 breaths. And here's what I want you to do. For the first breath, same thing as before. I'm going to call it collecting attention, which is you bring full attention, total but gentle attention to one breath. The second breath is you calm the body. Whatever those words mean to you, calm the body. And the third breath, bring up joy. And if you have problem doing that, if you don't know what that means, try this. Try smiling. Half smile or full smile, whatever those words mean to you. And the reason is because the facial expression reflects your emotional state and also feeds back to emotional state. So just by smiling, you will become a little bit happier. Sounds good? Okay. So we begin. Let's begin now. First breath, collecting attention. Second breath, calming the body. Third breath, bringing up joy. And thank you. Thank you. How many of you feel a little bit more joyful than before? Okay, good. Practically everybody. Well done. You might ask, why is this so effective? We did 3 things. The first, collecting attention, right? Calming the body, bringing up joy. It turns out that each of the 3 is by itself conducive to joy. Remember the first exercise we did, the first one? Already is a little bit pleasant, a little bit joyful. So because each of the 3 is by itself conducive to joy, you put them together. It's very powerful. And if you do that a lot, if you do this, you have, with enough practice, anytime you can do this, you have access to joy. And if you bring a lot of attention to it, something else happens, which is, or maybe I tell a story. Oh, yeah. I'm debating myself whether to tell a story now or a bit later. I'll tell a story now. I was speaking to an audience like this, and then in the audience was this guy called Matthew Ricard. Somebody might have heard of him. He's a monk. He has 60,000 hours of meditation experience. And I led one of these 10-second things. And he was in the audience. He was thinking to himself, this can't work, right? Because if 10 seconds work, like, why did I spend 60,000 hours meditating? And then he did it anyway. And then he was like, oh my God, it worked. And so it surprised even him. Right? And then later on, he came to me and he said he figured out what happened. And he said it's something he already knew, but he kind of forgotten, which was something in the Tibetan, there's a Tibetan analogy in the old scriptures, which is if you bring high intensity of attention to the practice. So remember I gave the instruction, total but gentle attention to one breath. You put a lot of intensity. It is like having very strong perfume. So the analogy, if you have very strong perfume, you open it just for a few seconds, you close it back, even for just a few seconds. Your room will smell nice for like many minutes. Right? So it's an intensity. So same thing. If you calm the mind intensely, even for a few seconds, your calmness will last for at least a few minutes. So the intensity is important. Where was I? I was talking. Yeah, see, the problem with telling stories is I forget what I was talking about. So you did 3 things. Each one is conducive to joy. The breath thing. Yeah, sorry, I forgotten what I was going to say. Blue cars. So, anyway, so this practice, do this a lot, right? And then you have access to joy any time of the day. What else happens after that? If you do this a lot, okay, sorry, let me say that later on because I want to assign homework first. Homework, eating and drinking. Okay. So every time you eat, at the very first bite, bring full attention to the taste, and not just the taste, the joy of the experience. Right? Again, why? To familiarize the mind with joy. And even you're eating with a friend, even the conversation is okay because it's only the first bite. It's only a few seconds. Easy? Drinking water, same thing. The first 1 or 2 seconds, oh, no more thirst. This is beautiful. Meeting a friend, same thing. First moment, bring attention to the joy. I haven't seen you in a long time. Yeah, see that moment. Right? Nothing changed. Right? Didn't take any extra time. Shower, first moment of water. So any pleasant experience, bring attention to the joy of that thin slice of joy. Right? Sounds good? Okay, that was a homework. That's step 2. Step 3 is to uplift the mind with what we call the heart practices. So what are the heart practices? Loving kindness, compassion, and altruistic joy. These are the heart practices. And same as before, another virtuous cycle, which is to first to bring up or to experience that the mental state involved in kindness, compassion, generosity, altruism, whatever it is. And then, if joy arises, bring full attention to the joy. And then the joy will reinforce that mental state. And then let the mental state reinforce the joy. And it becomes a virtuous cycle. And one of the most important things about this cycle is that eventually, if you do this enough, goodness and joy become one. You become joyful to be good. And that's important because if the previous thing, we talked about inclining the mind towards joy. If you do that, one of the effects is you start noticing not just the presence, but the absence of pain. And then also you notice, because you notice absence of pain, you notice something called the joy of blamelessness, which is when you have a clear conscience. You start to say, this is a joyful state. It's not a neutral state, it's a joyful state. It's joyful to do the right thing. So you combine the joy of blamelessness and the joy of kindness and generosity and compassion, joy of goodness, put it together. What does this mean? This means that you never have to talk about ethics again for the rest of your life. Because that is ethics, right? If you're joyful being good, if you're joyful to be free from blame, then you always do the right thing. Right? There's no more discussion needed about what is ethical and what is not. So, uplifting the mind. Shall we try a practice? Again, 10 seconds, very quick. So, I want you to secretly identify 2 people in this room, and then just think, I wish for this person to be happy, and I wish for that person to be happy. Just think. Don't do anything. Don't say anything. Don't go like, don't do that. Just think. It's an entirely thinking exercise. Sounds good? Okay, 10 seconds. Thank you. You notice you're happier already? Okay. You notice that to be on the giving end of a kind thought is in itself intrinsically rewarding. And again, it took no time, right? And if that is true, then my friends, this is a highly reliable source of happiness. Just by thinking, I wish for that guy to be happy, that alone makes you happy. And if you do that a lot, what happens? It becomes a mental habit, right? You see random people, and the first thought is, I wish for this person to be happy. As a first thought. Why? Because it is a habit. No other reason than because it's a habit. And then habit becomes personality. Personality becomes character. Character becomes you. So by just having a habit, by doing something often enough, thinking often enough, you become a kind person. You can change just by having this thought. The other point that blew my mind was how powerful this experience was. By the way, it surprised me. And so this is what happened. I was speaking on a Monday evening. So Jack Confield in Spirit Rock, near to here, he has a Monday class. Right? So Jack invited me to speak in one of those Mondays, so I went. And so we did this, and I assigned homework. The homework is, I said tomorrow, Tuesday. Tomorrow is a work day, so try this. Every hour, spend 10 seconds wishing for 2 people to be happy outside your office, in your head. So it's not embarrassing, right? Because nobody knows you're thinking. Just don't go like, right? No, so just think. And don't go like, not embarrassing, right? And then go back to work, nothing changed. Only 10 seconds. See what happens. So I say 1 hour, 8 hours of work, 1 hour, every hour, 10 seconds, try it. So that was Monday night. Wednesday morning, I received an email from a total stranger. And this person say, I hate my job. I hate coming to work every single day. However, I did the homework on Tuesday, and Tuesday was my happiest day in 7 years. Happiest day in 7 years. What did it take? It took 80 seconds of thinking. And the best thing is that every adult I've ever met in my life knows how to bring up a thought. So all you have to do is to bring up a thought for 80 seconds. And that could be the happiest day in 7 years. Like, mind-blowing, right? Shall we try another exercise? So now we're getting to know each other. Now we are all experts. This is a long-form exercise. This will be quite long. This will be 30 seconds. I like you to do this. I like you to bring to mind somebody you care about. Maybe somebody in this room, maybe it doesn't have to be. Somebody you care about, wish for that person to be happy. And then if joy arises, bring attention to that joy until it fades away. That's all. And then when it fades away, just sit there and relax for 30 seconds. Shall we try that? Okay, beginning now. Bring to mind somebody you care about. I wish for this person to be happy. And if any joy arises, just bring attention to it. Okay. Thank you, my friends. Thank you for your attention. You like this exercise? Okay, so this is the long form of the loving kindness exercise. The short form was what we did earlier, which is wish for people to be happy randomly. The long form is not just wishing that, also, more importantly, paying attention to the joy. Why? Same thing. To familiarize the mind with the joy of goodness, and then letting that joy reinforce the mental state, the goodness state, which reinforce the behavior. And then it goes, again, it's a cycle. And then eventually, you reach a point where goodness and joy are one. So these are the 3 steps. For those of you who didn't take notes, you can buy the book, right? For sale in all good bookstores. Easing into joy, inclining toward joy, and uplifting the mind with goodness. Okay, these 3 steps. If you do these 3, what happens? 3 things happen. The first thing that happens is that you find that joyful experiences become even more joyful, for the simple reason that you're paying attention to it. And again, it doesn't cost you anything. Right? Nothing changes at all. All you do is pay more attention, and you double your joy. Right? This is the best deal, like the best deal on earth, right? The best deal on TV, and free shipping and handling. The second thing that happens is that neutral experiences become joyful. And the reason for that is that we stop taking them for granted. So I'll give you 2 examples. One example is freedom from pain. Right? When I have a toothache, I tell myself, if I don't have this pain, I'll be so happy. Right? And then I went to see a dentist. I got this taken care of. And then, after 3 days, I forget to be happy. And in my case, it happened again. Same tooth. The filling broke, it sunk into my gum. If I didn't have pain, I'd be so happy. Right? Went to the dentist, took care of it. 3 days later, I forgot. And then happened again, by the way. So the first time it broke, the second time it sunk in. Same thing. See a dentist, 3 days later, I forgot to be happy. And then it occurs to me, freedom from pain is such a wonderful thing. It's such a joyful thing. And yet, I keep forgetting to be happy. If I remember to be happy, then I'll always be joyful. So, questions for an engineer, the questions are why and how. And I kind of figured it out. Oh, by the way, so how did I get to that point? I reached a tipping point. The tipping point was I kept practicing the inclining the mind towards joy, as we did earlier. And then one day, it just happened. One day, I was drinking water. I was literally drinking water, and it just occurred to me. This moment right here, right now, I'm not in physical pain. I don't have pain in my tooth. I don't have pain in my back. I don't have this pain. And I'm not in mental pain. I'm not suffering from jealousy. I'm not suffering from anger. No hatred. Nothing at that moment. I said, oh my God, I'm so happy right now. Dude, I'm just getting water. Right? So that was my tipping point. And then I realized that, wait a minute, why don't I feel this way all the time? And I think I know the answer. The answer was this. If we have a stimulus-led experience, so let's say from a sense, like a sight or a sound, a taste or whatever, what happens is then it will lead to contact with sense object and sense organ. Contact leads to sensation, sensation leads to perception, perception leads to proliferation of mental activity. In other words, through stimulus, the mind is invited to participate. Lacking stimulus, this chain doesn't happen. Therefore, lacking stimulus, the mind doesn't participate. And therefore, that's why we don't notice the absence of phenomena. We only notice presence of phenomena. So that's the why. The question is how. How do I solve that? Turns out it's very easy. The way to solve it is through, again, a mental habit, which is every now and then just look at myself and say, am I in pain right now? No. I'm so happy. Right? And then just do that a lot, it becomes a habit. And then every now and then, as you walk by your normal life, just taking a walk, I'm not in pain right now. Woohoo! Right? At least once a day that happens. So that's why neutral experiences become positive. There's something else that happens, by the way, if you do that, which is gratitude. So the logical, if you do that, the logical conclusion of that is that you find that every experience is a miracle. Right? Some of you go to church. There are some miracle churches. You go in a wheelchair, and then you stand up, and then, oh my God, she can walk. Hallelujah! It's a miracle. However, most of us in this room can walk. How often do I say, I can walk? Hallelujah. Same thing, right? Seeing. Oh my God, she can see. Hallelujah. We can all see. How many of you say, I can see? Hallelujah. And so if you have this practice, suddenly you notice that every experience in life is worth saying hallelujah to. I can see, I can walk, I can think, I have friends, right? I have a job, I have air conditioning. So that happens. Again, through this training, again, effortlessly, through inclining the mind effortlessly becomes like that. So that's the second thing that happens. The third thing that happens is that painful experiences become less painful. At the very least, you learn to be able to deal with them. And there are a couple of ways that happens. The first way is that those same practices we use for increasing joy or accessing joy also helps us deal with pain. For example, calming the mind, resting the mind. It causes joy. At the same time, if you're in the difficult situation, you're in emotionally painful situation, calm the mind. Do that, half the pain is gone at the moment. And of course, you do the other half, but half of it is there. Begin to solve the problem. Right? So all the everything, loving kindness. In pain, in difficulty, dealing with a difficult person, kindness, compassion. The comparison is this. The comparison is you go to the gym a lot. You go to the gym just to look good, right? However, I mean, you've done muscles, you look good. However, then if you're falling off a ravine in times of emergency, you can hold on, you can pull yourself up. So you go to the gym to look good, but the same skill set allows you to get out of a difficult situation. Same thing here. You practice this for joy, but the same skill set allows you to deal with pain. So that's the first reason. The second reason it works is because it raises your happiness baseline. In my case, by a lot. So the comparison is that let's pretend that you are not very rich, right? And then, or your income is not very low, income not very high. And then, for whatever reason, you have to lose $100,000, medical bill or something. And then that's a lot of money, right? That's a huge hit. However, if you have a lot of money and or you have high income, you say, yeah, 100,000, I can make it back in a year. I can take it. Same thing here. If you have very high level of joy and you can bring in high level of joy, then the shit in life, you can just take care of it because you have so much resources to deal with all the shit. Right? That's the second thing. The third reason, I think even more powerful than the first two, is that you may find through this practice that the access to joy happens, if enough practice, it happens also in the midst of pain. And for me, the way I experienced it was, I find that when I'm in that deep pain, prolonged deep pain, sometimes out of nowhere, I have moments, sometimes minutes, of unadulterated pure joy. Like one moment I want to die, and then I have pure joy, and I want to die again. Right? It's like where did that come from? I must be going crazy, more crazy than I already am. I mean, that's what I thought. I really thought I was going crazy. And as an engineer, the question I ask myself is this: if I have access to joy, why can't the joy displace or dissolve the pain? If I had the pain, why can't the pain dissolve the joy? Like, it doesn't make sense. And I figured it out. I think the reason is that pain and joy are mutually doesn't dissolve each other, mutually non-dissolvable. So therefore, they can exist side by side. And if one is much stronger than the other, they can displace the other. So if you're very happy and a little bit of pain, yeah, whatever, just displaces it. But if they're both strong, then they don't displace each other. They exist side by side. So that's what I found out. It's to me one of those mind-blowing findings. The corollary or the implication of this finding is that therefore, joy can be used as a skillful way to deal with pain, especially as a skillful container. So for me, the moment I realized this was when I met this person called Rigoberta Menchú. She's a Nobel Peace Laureate. She's the only Mayan woman ever to win a Nobel Peace Prize. And I don't know if any of you have met a Nobel Peace Prize winner. I met a few, like 10. and there's a stereotype, by the way, and the stereotype is true. I mean, there are exceptions. I won't say who they are. But, stereotypically, you see one of those people, they're always very nice to you. They're joyful. They go, hey, how are you doing? They're warm, joyful, kind. Everything, like all the good qualities you can think of, they have it. And so I met Rigoberta, same thing, stereotypical, right? Wonderful human being, very happy. But in her case, I just had to know her for a very little amount of time, like an hour or so, and I realized that her pain, she has immense amount of pain she's holding, and the pain is just right under the surface. It doesn't scratch very deeply, just there. And for good reasons. So I learned later about her life story. Her father was burned alive. Yeah. Her mom was kidnapped, tortured, raped, murdered, and left on the street to rot. Horrible, right? Her brother suffered a similar fate. She lost a son. I mean, any one of those events is traumatic. I mean, she suffered the whole thing. And she's a Nobel Prize winner. So she went through, she had to lead her people despite all that. By the way, every Nobel Prize winner, Peace Prize winner you see, they have some trauma. It's not easy to win a Nobel Peace Prize. So she went through all that. And so the question is, how do I account for this? How do I account for all the pain and all the joy in one person, all the time? And I realized that the way she does it is she's using her joy as a skillful container. And the comparison is like if you have a fracture, a very serious fracture, you have a cast around it. And the cast will limit the damage and allow it to heal over time. So by containing the pain with joy, she's allowing it to not cause more damage, and she's allowing it to heal on her own. Right? It was beautiful, powerful lesson. And the way I experience it is the ability to access joy intermittently in pain is like oasis. So it's like going to a vast desert, it's a horrible desert, but the oasis, and the oasis allows me to survive the trip from one side of the desert to the other. And so this ability to access joy was for me, I started thinking it was only to be happy. I learned that, not just that, more importantly, it helps you deal with suffering. And eventually it helps you overcome suffering. Let me check the time. Okay, I want to leave time for questions. So I had a whole section, I'm going to skip that. I tell you the section is about success. But this is Berkeley, nobody cares about that. I'll finish and then I'll come back. Okay, yeah, I have one last thing. So I hope that through this book, my purpose for writing this book is this. I want to, how should I say it? So that I want to create a condition for world peace in my lifetime. That's my goal in life. Conditions for world peace in my lifetime. And I thought the way to do that is what will trigger world peace. I think what will trigger it is global compassion. Compassion on a global scale. That will trigger world peace. However, compassion has to be sustained by inner joy. Inner joy has to be sustained by inner peace. And there's feedback loop, right? Which is joy and compassion form a virtuous cycle. Joy and peace form a virtuous cycle. And so I wrote a book ostensibly about joy, but it is actually about the whole package, peace, joy, compassion. And through doing this, through writing this book, I hope that it's not just to heal an individual person. I hope that it's for healing the world. I hope that I'm making peace, joy, compassion widely understandable, widely accessible, but most importantly, widely practiced. I hope that everybody will practice peace, joy, and compassion. And I hope that together we will create the conditions for world peace in our lifetime. Thank you. Thank you. I have half an hour for questions. Can you ask me anything embarrassing? Yes, sir.
I really like the title of your book, Peace, Joy, and Compassion, because I've been thinking that.
Oh, title is Joy on Demand. Yeah, the publishers imposed it on me.
Memorial Day at Toronto, they were talking about peace and relations of Buddhism. And I also really enjoyed your telepathic response to your employees, because a lot of people don't recognize that really works. And in Lion's Roar yesterday, Dalai Lama has been studying with the scientists since he was a child. And they both determined that the mind thought process is like a bell and ringing out and giving information. So whatever you're thinking and whatever you're, I have problems with the compassion. The compassion is the part that radiates, and they say the serious, clearer mind and a longer ring in it, and it goes out
Yes.
and it echoes, echoing friend. And Buddhism is the woman and the bell, but and mostly your concise presentation, I really enjoyed. And I
Thank
want
you.
to say about the Dalai Lama and the bell, because I know you know that, and it relates to science, so it could relate to American mysticism.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. That reminds me of an analogy in the ancient text, which is that somebody who's strong in loving kindness is compared to a trumpeter who is blowing his trumpet very loudly. So people around him can hear the trumpet effortlessly. In the same way, a person who is strong in loving kindness, his loving kindness spread effortlessly, and people around him can just feel it. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Everyone at Google have a meditation practice, or is it like?
I wish.
Is it offered or optional or required, or how does it work?
First, I retired from Google. I retired since November.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So yeah, I know. I'm a big boy now. Answer is yes. The way it works in Google is we have a very strong culture of meditation. It's all optional, by the way. Nobody's being forced to do that. But we have meditation rooms everywhere. We have people leading classes. It's called G-Pause, right? So there are people who lead classes lead sittings every week. There are a couple of classes on meditation. There are short ones. One called hacking. I think it's called neuro self-hacking. Yeah, it's targeted for engineers, right? They like the language. And the course that I was responsible for creating, Search Inside Yourself, it is fairly complete. So it's not just mindfulness. It is also emotional intelligence. Using mindfulness to train emotional intelligence. And because it is emotional intelligence, it also includes interpersonal intelligence. And because it also interpersonal intelligence, there is kindness and compassion in the curriculum. And so Search Inside Yourself, SIY, has become, even way before I left Google, it was the #1 most popular class in Google. The wait list is always very long. And I'll tell you a story. I only found this out from somebody who was angry at me. Which is, there was a time when I was running it, the class, every time I open the class gets filled up in 30 seconds. And the way it worked was that they tell me, right? They say they're in a meeting room, people have their laptops on, and then somebody just suddenly say, class is open. And everybody knows what they mean. They all go in and log in and try to, and half the people in the room will not be able to sign up. Because 30 seconds is over, right? So yeah, so some people got very angry at me. And then, Bill, the guy who took over me, he very capable. He expanded the number of seats by a factor of 10. So we ended up having, I say him, that other people do all my real work. So Bill started a class for training teachers. So we're 10 times more capacity today. So even that, the wait list is like 1,000 or something. So it's going really well. People say it changed their lives. I get testimonial a lot. One of the one that touched me the most is this person he said, I now see myself and other people with kindness. That's huge, right? And so because of the success, not because of success, I mean, I've always wanted to do this from day one when I created Search Inside Yourself, to bring it outside Google to the world. So I started an institute in the Presidio called the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, SIYLI, pronounced as SILY. SILY.org. And so SILY has been bringing this outside the world with the blessing of Google, and Google donated all the IP. And we have other companies, SAP, for example. It's a German company, right? And German engineers, and they love it. So it's becoming very popular in SAP, and also now it's spreading to other companies. And SILY is also running a class on joy. I haven't created it yet, but I'm supposed to. And for those interested, SILY.org/joy. Yeah, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
In connection to her question,
yes.
Would new people train with you, like the ones who teach the class? Do they train with you?
Better than that. they train an actually certified teacher. So for those of you who are familiar with the scene, the most senior teachers we have are Norman Fisher, who's a Zen master in San Francisco Zen Center, and Meg Levy, who's also another Zen master. So they have been responsible for training teachers. And for me, I want the word Google certified to be the equivalent of of I don't know, of ranger school, right? It's like if you go to ranger school, you know you're the best of the best. And I want that same thing. So the teachers that we have, they have at least 2,000 hours of practice in a lifetime. They have a daily practice, and they have, for example, able to like bring their mind to calmness on demand, bring about joy, compassion on demand, kind of thing. Yeah. I tell you something else, which is I'm actually an accidental teacher. Yeah. So when I created Search Inside Yourself, I wasn't prepared to teach, and I not just wasn't prepared, I was unqualified. I still am. I was unqualified to teach. And so what happened was, remember 2008? There was like a crisis in the world. And then Google reacted with like massive budget cuts to the training budget. And so the head of Google University told me in no uncertain terms that if I wasn't teaching this, the class is going away. But I said, but I'm not qualified. And he said, yes, and you're not teaching it, it's going away. Which is what caused me to start teaching it. Turns out I didn't suck as much as I thought I would. And because of that, I wrote a book. And everything was history. It was fascinating. Yeah. I still feel unqualified, but at least we have a book. Okay, that gentleman.
So, how do you deal with the balance between these, with the instant, with the distraction and gratification versus the joy and way there's sort of, I mean, you see with the younger generation or all of us with these devices and people walking down the street focused on these rather than the world. Would you have advice or thoughts on that?
Not necessarily advice. So it's a question I've been asking myself, and there's a similar question, which is, why do I eat so much junk food? And the answer is because I can. And the same thing, why do I consume so much junk information? Right? Because I can. And so first, I would say the problem has been around for a very long time. And in the old days, before we had this, we had newspapers. We had books. Right? You see like people like reading the newspaper instead of talking to their partners all the time. Right? So it's not a new problem. So the solution, I think, the partial solution is, first, it's an awareness. Awareness. Specifically this. Specifically, the currency of information is attention. You need to, in order to consume information, you need to pay attention. And attention is a non-renewable resource. Right? Once you pay it, once you use it, you no longer have it. So, therefore, abundance of information leads necessarily to the poverty of attention. Therefore, if most of the information you're consuming is junk information, that is a big price to pay. And so once you're aware of that, then if it looks different, the world looks different, then you're more conscious about consuming because there's a huge price to pay. The price to pay is attention. So that's one, the awareness. Now, the second thing I think is a joy of human beings, basically. Right? So the reason we do this rather than this is because this is more fun than this. Right? So the solution is to find the fun in this. Yeah, that's what I think. So yeah, loving kindness practice. This.
In your first step, you said rest the mind.
Yes.
And you made it sound easy. You said, oh, you know how to rest. But myself, a lot of people I know, I can't shut off thoughts very easily.
Right.
Especially sometimes I'm trying to sleep at night.
Right.
I'm thinking about the day. And I'm like, okay, stop thinking. It doesn't listen. It keeps thinking. So what do you mean by rest the mind? And how do you do it specifically?
Two ways, contradictory, and either one or both might work for you. So first, the context. The context is don't stop your mind from thinking. It is okay to think. Or the joke is meditation is not what you think. So one or two ways to work with this. The first way is to just allow the mind to think while you bring attention to the breath. So the breath becomes foreground attention, and movement of mind becomes background. So in the foreground, I'm just doing this, and in the background, things are happening. Allow it to be. So that's one way to do this. Another way to do this, which may work better, is to bring attention to the thoughts. Right? So the thought becomes foreground attention. Foreground, yeah, you look at it. Look at it intensely. See what you see in the mind, what you hear, what you taste, what does it look like. So intently bring it there, and the background attention is the breath. When I tried doing this, so I had this issue where I kept being distracted by thoughts, and it was very annoying. Right? And then at different times of my progress, I had two solutions. The first one was when I was a novice meditator, and I just stopped trying. So I tell you the full story, and then I'll tell you the second story. The story was I was the worst meditator in the world. I can say that as a technical certainty. Oh, I have 5 minutes. Okay. Where was I? And how I couldn't breathe, right? Because I was so tense. Nobody I know had problem breathing in meditation. I had a problem. I'm literally the worst in the world. And so after trying for like weeks or months, nothing worked. So one day I just decided I'll just stop trying. I'm just going to sit there. And then when I sat there, after 10 minutes, I realized I was breathing. And I caught myself breathing. And I noticed, wait a minute, this is the first time I can see myself breathing without running out of breath. And I did that by not trying. So that's one way. So to not try, that could be the solution. And just seeing. The second way, so that would happen in a later part when I was already an experienced meditator. And so I had a lot of self-blame. I said, I suck at this. I'm supposed to be good at this. And now suddenly, my thoughts keep taking me away from my breath. And so I was prescribed that method. And then when I did that, I realized something. I realized my thoughts are very shy. When I look intensely at them, they run away. Run away, right? And so it became like a game. It's like I felt I was playing a bunch of kids. A bunch of kids go like, eh, and then you look at the kids, they all run away, they're laughing. It was like that. So try this. Try looking intensely at the thoughts and see if they're shy and run away. If they're shy and run away, they don't have a problem. If they don't run away, it's not a problem because they're just playing with you. So either way, try both. And the key part is equanimity. And what this practice allows you to do is to practice equanimity. Okay, I think I have time for one last question. Okay. I don't know who raised their hand. I think we did.
So I'm just curious. I am typically a joyful person, and I find that I go sometimes through like roller coasters, like cruising. And so when I've hit one of those moments, I tried meditation, and I did it for 30 days, either 2 to 20 minutes, whatever I achieved in that day, felt comfortable before my monkey mind went crazy. And I quit because I did not, after 30 days, I didn't notice a noticeable change in equanimity in my life. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. So I decided, okay, it's not for everyone, move on.
The one breath exercise, did that work for you just now?
Yes, well the second one did when I rested my body. The single breath no, the 3 breaths yes.
Just do that. There is a concept, a very important concept in medical science and not applied often enough in meditation, which is minimum effective dose. Right? There's a dosage for everybody, and it's different. And the dosage for meditation, it has to be just slightly more than the minimum effective dose, but not too much more. And it's possible that at your stage, 20 minutes a day is just too much. Yeah, so that 10 breaths, whatever, 10 breaths a day could be it. Yeah, so try that. And then once you're comfortable with it, don't stay there. Push the boundary. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that's all the time we have, right? Okay, with that, thank you very much.